Right, so I'm going to record our session. So I'm going to hide your faces. So if you have something to say, please just unmute yourselves and shout it out because I can't see your faces right now. So what are we doing today? We have our Google Meet, and I'm going to go over more of those questions that we had yesterday. Just more review, more practice. I feel like the more you do, the easier it'll be. Make sure you do your attendance. During the independent time today, okay, so once you leave me, you're going to go on Edgenuity and you have the warm up and instruction, and you have to take notes. But do you see right here? What does it say? You do not need to submit your notes today. Okay, so you do not need to submit your notes today. I'm hoping that I can trust you like I trusted you yesterday to just watch the notes, take the notes. But then wait, if you don't have the notes, there's no like download and submit here button. So how do you access the notes? Do you remember like the second day of school? I showed you how to access notes as well. So here we are. We are doing what does it say? We're doing literal equations, warm up, and instruction. So literal equations, let me scroll down, 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 down. Literal equations, you're just doing the warm up and the instruction. Don't do the quiz. The quiz will be tomorrow. Okay. So you're just doing the warm up and instruction. How do you get the notes? Remember how you press this plus button right here? And then you can get the view guided notes. So you can print them from here, or if you want to type them on Kami, then do you see how there's a K there? So you can open it with Kami that way. So either way works. Okay, you can just print it, write it, and then, or you can type it with Kami by typing in or pressing that blue button. Okay, so that's how you get your notes today because I didn't put it in Schoology. Okay, and again, if you are behind and if you're like back here in the old lesson, you haven't done this quiz yet, then you're going to have to be behind and you kind of have to do double work today, okay, to get yourselves caught up. One final thing before we get started with the actual math. You might have noticed that I updated the grade book. Okay, all I did was I put in the grades for your assignment from solving linear equations. And then I also put in this assignment grade because that was done. This was done last Friday, and this was done like, I don't know, last week, Monday or something like that, Tuesday. So those grades are in. If you got a 0, that obviously means that you didn't do it. Okay, so that's why it's a 0 in the grade book. So once it's done, email me and I'll update that grade. If you want to redo it again because you got a bad score, remember how I said for the first, now I guess we're in school for 5 weeks. So for the first 5 weeks, I will let you redo assignments and give you more retakes for quizzes. So just email me, say, Ms. Friesenhan, can I have a redo for my assignment? But you have to tell me which one, variables on both sides or distributed property, because there's 2 in the grade book. Okay. And then if you think that there's anything wrong with the grade book, I might have mistyped. There's a very high possibility. If I mistyped something, just email me. So just email me for anything, any questions that you have, and then you'll be okay. Okay? So let's do some practice problems. We're going to start with easy. I'm going to have you try a couple by yourself as well, and then we will continue from there. Okay? If you have any questions or if there's any issues, please, please, please speak up. And that means you have to unmute and you have to just shout it out because I'm covering your faces because I'm recording us right now. Okay, here we go. Let's start with one of the more basic ones. Okay, please write this down. A equals 2 times B minus C. And let's say I want to solve for the B. Okay, so the B is what I want to solve for. Okay, I'm going to do one with you, and then you're going to kind of try a couple by yourself, okay? So it looks like if I want the B, it looks like I need to move the 2, and I need to move the C. But there's a specific order. Remember when we solve equations, if these were all numbers, I always want to move the thing that's farthest away from what I'm trying to keep. So I'm trying to keep the B and the 2's connected, but C is a little bit farther away because there's a plus or minus. So really, you always do your adding and subtracting first. So I'm going to add C to both sides. And then after I do the adding and subtracting, just like a normal equation, then I can do your multiplying and dividing. So now at this point, I have 2 times B. I still want to keep the B, so I'm going to divide everything by 2. So remember, my final answer is B equals A plus C over 2. And it's all over 2 because you divided at the very end. You divided the A and the C by the 2. Okay, So yesterday, I also kind of taught you how you can double check your answers. And I'm going to go over that one more time, just because I feel like maybe some of you didn't quite understand. So here was my question. A equals 2b minus c. Here's my answer. B equals a plus c over 2. So this is how I can check my answers. Remember how I said, okay, well, you have 3 letters. You have A, B, C. If I just assign random numbers to make this sentence true and work out, I can plug in those random numbers here and it should work out as well. So let's just look at the question. There's one letter here that it probably wouldn't make sense for me to just make up a random number for. Can any of you guys shout it out if you know? What letter should I just not assign? Okay, so I heard a couple of answers. Someone said B, but then someone also said A. A is the one that you don't want to just give a random number to. Because what if I said A was 10? Well, if A is 10, I got to figure out some math and figure out what does B and C have to be for all of this to equal 10. And that just takes too much work. It's possible, but it takes too much work. Wouldn't it be easier for me to assign a number to B and assign a number to C? Then I can easily figure out what would work and then just plug in whatever that is for A. So, like, remember the numbers I told you to plug in? Don't do 0, don't do 1, because those always mess up your problem, because timesing it by 0 is 0, timesing it by 1 in itself. Don't do decimals, don't do negatives. You're just making your life more difficult. Start with 2, and then 3, and then 4. Okay, so 2 times 2, because B is 2. So 2 times 2 is 4. 4 minus 3, because C is 3. 4 minus 3 is 1. Boom, A is 1. I easily figured out what A, B, and C could be for this to work out. Now let's plug it in here. So for this to work out, A plus C, 1 plus 3 is 4. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Is B 2? Yes. So I know that I got this right. It does take a little bit longer to double check my answer, but at least you know it's right. So, I mean, maybe not double check your answer for homework, but maybe for a test or a quiz, yes, definitely take the time to double check your answer so you know that you're doing it right. Okay, because that would be considered a major grade. Okay, so you try one by yourself. Okay, let's say I have A minus 4 equals, let's say, 2 baby A plus C. And let's say you want to solve for the C. I'll make it start easy for you. Okay, first thing I want you to keep in mind, baby A and capital A are two completely different things. Sometimes you'll see like a baby letter and a capital letter. They're completely different. Treat them as different letters. Okay, so don't combine a capital and a baby. They don't combine. Think of them as two different things. Hopefully this didn't take you that long to figure out. Solve for C. Can someone shout it out if you think you know? Close. Very close. Everyone wants to divide by 2a, but if you divide by 2a, isn't 2 divided by 2 1? So you still have a 1 left over on this side. You don't want 1, you want 0. Nope, because you want to keep c. So that means the 2a is definitely what you need to move. Minus, yes, subtract 2a, minus 2a. So you're subtracting 2a on both sides. So look, 2 minus 2 is 0. There's nothing left on this side. So all you have is the c, so you're good. Okay, so what do I have left here? Please don't combine a minus 2a. Even though they're technically the same letter, one is capital, one is lowercase. That's completely different. So my final answer is just a minus 4, because that was on top, and then minus 2a, and that's it. That's your whole answer. Okay, let's try another one. A equals B, C, D. And let's solve for C. Okay, does anyone think they know what the answer is or what to do? Perfect. Okay, my answer is A over BD. So think, this is BCD. Well, what symbols go between? If I don't see symbols, it's time. So it's B times C times D. So I know that if I want to keep the B, or the C, sorry, the B and the D need to go. Well, who goes first? I would have to divide by B and I would have to divide by D. They both can go together because they're both doing the same thing. If I'm dividing and dividing, I can just divide the whole problem by BD. That cancels to 1, that cancels to 1, and 1C is C, right? That's why it's okay for this to cancel to 1, whereas like this one couldn't be 1 because it's a plus in between, not a times. Okay, so I'm going to divide by BD, do the whole thing together. So your final answer is C equals A over BD. Some of the kids were like, wait, but there's like a C in between. That's okay. If it's all multiply, you can just pick and choose what you want. It doesn't have to be two things right next to each other. Okay? All right, let's try another one. Let's say 2A minus 3B equals 10. And let's say I want to solve for B. So we're getting a little bit more complicated. 2A minus 3B equals 10. And I want to solve for B. Okay, does someone think, maybe not what the answer is, but what's the first thing I should do you think? Thank you for whoever said that. Subtract 2A. So remember, if you want to keep the B, you know you have to move the 2 and the A and the 3. But the 2A is farthest away from the B. You're always doing your adding and subtracting first. So you're going to minus 2A on both sides. You have negative 3B left over equals 10 minus 2A. Okay, can someone else tell me what do I do now? Close, not divide 3. Yeah, negative 3. You always have to keep that symbol before. So negative 3. So left over then, you have B equals 10 minus 2A all over negative 3. And that would be my final answer. Okay, let me make it even more complicated for you now. Sorry, guys. This is kind of just like middle complicated, middle hard. It's not even that hard yet. So since you guys are in pre-AP, we are wanting you to be challenged. So we want to challenge you too. Okay. All right. So let's say I have this. A equals 2 pi RH plus 2 pi B. And let's say that I want to solve for this B. The only reason why this is hard is because there's so many letters and numbers. It's not any different than what you just did before. It's almost exactly the same process. So don't get bogged down by all the numbers and letters. Just think about what you just did. Okay. Does anyone think they know what you have to do first? You wouldn't, because there actually aren't any like terms. This 2 ends in a pi RH. This 2 ends in just a pi B. So do you see how like this ending of pi RH and this ending of pi B, they're actually not like terms. Like if this was a pi RH and this was a pi RH, then yes, you can combine them. But there's no like terms. Good guess though. Anyone else? Okay, so you want to keep the B. So you know you have to move the 2 and the pi and the R and the H and the 2 and the pi. So do the thing that's farthest away. All of this is farthest away. So you're going to subtract it out. Subtract out 2 pi RH because they all come together. So you can just subtract it out. So I have A minus 2 pi RH equals 2 pi B. Now what do I do next? Okay, so the reason why you don't divide is because isn't 2 divided by 2 or pi divided by pi 1? So wouldn't you have 1 plus 2 pi b left over if you divided, but you don't want a 1. You want it all completely gone to the other side. So 2 minus 2 is 0. Pi minus pi is 0. That's why you subtract it and you don't divide it. Okay, yes. 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 And the reason why that's the final answer is because if you want to keep the b, the last thing you have to do is divide by 2 pi. That's why whoever said that, sorry, because I can't see your face, got that as your answer. Okay. Now let's make it even more complicated. Okay. Here we go. Let's say I have x equals y plus z all over 10. And I want to solve for z. So think about what I told you yesterday. There's a specific first step you have to do. You don't have a choice. Does anyone remember? Okay, so what with the 10? Yes, thank you. You have to. If ever you see a denominator, you have to get rid of that bottom number. You don't have a choice, okay? So you have to multiply by 10 because right now it's divide by 10. So then left over, you have 10x equals y plus z. I hope you know what to do now. If you want to keep the z, you just subtract y. So you have 10x minus y equals z. That's your final answer. Okay, I'm going to do 2 more, and then your review is done, and then we have to get to the new stuff. Okay, so let's say I have this one. A equals, or how about, let's say C plus A equals B. Okay, sorry, that doesn't make sense. C times A. Sorry, I'm trying to make up questions on the spot. So C times A equals B over D. And you want to solve for D. So just like what we did, there was something you have to do first, and we want to keep D, or we want to solve for D. Does anyone know what the first steps has to be? Not multiply by B, not B as in boy. Yeah, multiply by D as in dog. Remember, the reason why is because it's the denominator. If you see a denominator, you have to multiply it out. Doesn't matter that that's the one you want to keep. That doesn't matter that's the one you're solving for. You have to. There's nothing you can do about it. So my next step would just be CAD, right? Because you're just multiplying it all. So C times A times D equals B. So now I still want to solve for D. D is now on this side. So it looks like all I'm doing then is I'm going to divide by CA. Divide by CA. So final answer, D equals B over CA. And remember, there are always ways that you can double check your answer so you're not completely lost in the dark. Okay. Last one, that's a review. And then we'll get to the new stuff. Let's say I have C equals 3 parentheses 10 minus x. And let's say I want to solve for the x. Oops, just the x, not the negative x, but just the positive x. Okay, I'm going to do this with you because I don't think you guys really remember. I bet at this point yesterday your brains were kind of exploding. What's the first thing I have to do? Thank you for remembering. Please don't distribute. If this were a normal problem, then yes, distribute. Okay, but remember, you're just adding like 4 more steps to the problem. If it's 3 times all of this, then why don't you just divide by 3 and then you'll get that rid of and you won't have parentheses anymore. So you have C over 3 equals 10 minus x. Okay, now what? I still want the x. What's the next thing I do? Right, you're going to minus 10. So this is where some kids get tricked with how to write it. You're writing it as C over 3 and then minus 10 off to the side, right? You're not subtracting the 10 on top with the C. The 10 is off to the side because that's what you did next, all over negative x. Okay, now what do I do? Not add 1, close. Nope. It's divide by -1 because it's -1 times x. So opposite of times is divide. You're dividing by -1. So your final answer is going to be c over 3 minus 10 all over -1 equals x. All right. That is it for review. I'm hoping that you guys have a little bit more of an understanding. If you're still completely lost, please stay after when everyone else leaves and let's talk about something that we can do to help you. Okay, because it's only going to get harder from here. Okay, at this point, you can stop writing. There are a couple questions that I feel like are going to be a little confusing on your quiz tomorrow. So I just want to clarify. It's not that the math is hard, but I think that the way they ask it might be confusing. So you don't have to write this, and I'm going to go fast because I know your 20 minutes are over. Okay, so let's say I have the question F equals M times A, and they're going to ask like, what is A if F is 10 and M is 2? Do you see what they're asking you to do? Like, it's actually really easy, but I think some of you are like overcomplicating it. All they're asking you to do is take 10 and plug it in for F, because they said F is 10, take 2 and plug it in as M. So you really have 10 equals 2 times A. And they're asking you, what is A? Well, A is 5. Just solve for A, and A is 5. Okay, so don't overcomplicate it. Sometimes the questions on the quizzes, they're just, that basic. Okay. Another question is this. Well, I don't know. Some people are thinking that it's like, oh, well, we've been doing stuff really hard. And so, this one must be really hard as well. Like it must take me 5 steps to, I don't know. Okay, here's my question. I want to solve for A. So, what's the first thing you think I should do? Close, not, yeah, divide. Remember how we said if there's a parentheses, get rid of the parentheses thing by just getting rid of this number. So, divide by 5. So I have x over 5 equals A over C. I still want to solve for A. So now what do I do? Nope, because I want to keep A. So what needs to be moved? Yeah, multiply by C because there's still that denominator there. Okay, so then my answer will be x over 5 times C equals A. They might write it like this. Remember how back in like 5th grade when you multiplied fractions, like if you multiply by a whole number, you can just put it over 1 and then just multiply straight across. So x times C is just xc. 5 times 1 is just 5. So they are probably going to write it like that. Okay, so if you multiply by a whole number to a fraction, you can just multiply straight across. So they're probably going to write the answer like that. Okay, all right, last one, then we are done. Hold on. Okay, sorry. For this one, so the answer is 5. But they're going to write it like this: 5 meters per second squared. And they're not saying like m over s squared is part of the answer. They're saying like, because this stands for, this is actually science. And I think you're going to learn this later. So they're saying F is force, M is mass, and A is acceleration. So my answer is 5, but it's 5 what? The M over S squared. Your units. It's basically like saying 5 feet, 5 inches, 5, liters. This is just your units. So they're not trying to like add more letters. Okay, I think that's why I wrote that down, because it was complicated. Okay, last one, and then we're done. A equals 1/2 B times H, and you have to solve for B. Okay, we haven't really gone over this one yet. What's the first thing you have to do? Yes. Okay, so remember how we said whenever you have a fraction, you have to multiply by the denominator. So your fraction looks like this now. You still have to multiply by the denominator. So times it by 2. That's the first thing you always do to get rid of your denominator. So you have 2a equals, and then your numerator just drops down. So it's just 1 times b times h, which is just bh, right? But if you had like a 3 on top, then it would be like 3bh. So now if you want to solve for b, you just divide by h, divide by h. So your final answer is 2a over h equals b. And that's it. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so that was a lot, I know.